All right. We're at week 7, which means 4 more weeks. Yes, I did count on my fingers. Don't judge me. But 4 more weeks, 4 more weeks. So it's going to get a little bit lighter, at least for 200. Okay. What do I mean by that? If we have more than, like, if we only have one chapter, I noticed that the chapter is a little bit smaller. And if you've been kind of looking, like today's chapter 36, it's just disaster preparedness and response. So it's a little bit lighter. We may not take up the entire time. I'm okay with that. And then it does give you guys the opportunity to kind of like relax, rebound, and get ready for micro. Okay. We do have a quick Quizlet, 12 questions, fast round. We'll go through them. It's going to be just on chapter 36, and then we're going to wrap it all up. But as per usual, our quote of the week. This is really good because we've got 4 weeks left. Your present circumstances do not determine where you can go. They merely determine where you start. Now, I like this particular quote because it reminds us that no matter where we begin, our circumstances do not define our future. The journey ahead really depends on the actions that we take and the determination that we have to move forward. For us as STs, this is an extremely powerful message, in my humble opinion, because it emphasizes that it doesn't matter our current challenges. Each step of growth, each development can open up new opportunities in our field. So I encourage you guys, as we're at week 7, to keep pushing forward with each lesson, all the skills that you're getting ready to gain, because it is going to build you into the most amazing version of you. So if you have the opportunity to look at the intro video, there are 3 questions that I want you to kind of keep in mind as we go through tonight's live session. What is the difference between an emergency and a disaster? Differentiate between a natural disaster versus a handmade disaster, and define mitigation and give several examples of mitigation in natural disasters. Well, we're going to cover all that. Okay. So, chapter 36, getting ready. Now, our learning goals, we're going to talk about none other than the disasters. We're going to look at common features and look at the roles of government, the different agencies, and explain what is meant by an all-hazard approach to disaster planning. But of course, for us, it's slightly different. Now, disasters like pandemics, natural, and emergencies are often happening more frequently. That means that hospitals rely on all staff. That includes us as STs to be able to respond quickly. Now, in a crisis, we may assist in emergency surgeries. We may have to set up and maintain sterile fields under pressure. We may even have to help with patient care in a non-traditional or like crowded settings. Now, there are accreditation groups like KHAP that require disaster preparedness training and, of course, different programs. This training just makes sure that, especially for us as STs, we understand emergency protocols and we know that we are valuable team members with every second mattering. Now, I want you to think of this. In a large-scale disaster, should we as STs be trained to take on roles outside of the operating room, like basic patient care or triage? You can type in yes or no, and this is your opinion. There's no right or wrong answer. It's just how you feel. Okay. The reason I ask that is because let's say you say yes. Okay. Every health worker should be able to adapt emergencies, right? Some may say no, and that's okay because STs, we are most effective when focusing on our specialized skills in surgery. So this isn't oh, it has to be yes or it has to be no. It's just what do you think feels right with you? And for the most part, everyone here is like, yes, I can attest that it does give you, it makes you more valuable as a just team player. If you know, hey, I know how to stir IVs, or hey, I know how to do wound dressings or dressing changes, so that now you are that kind of like go-to person. And then, of course, in a situation where you have to go to the operating room or in the operating room area, then you could do that. But we're in it to help people, so you would want to. Exactly. Like, why not? Um, and I love that, Quincy. It's perfect. True story. When we as techs don't have to know how to suture, okay? It's not a requirement, but it is a good skill to have. We had a medical emergency on the ship. Granted, I know military is a little bit different, but go with me. And we had one of our sailors, he had a headlock. His his scalp had avulsed. He's really tall. He was doing something, and then just his scalp just, got scraped off. And so we had the opportunity. They had asked a lot of us corpsmen who wanted to suture. And of course, I was like, psh, my hand went up. And my surgeon had been showing me. And so I was the first one. I was like, yes. And it was really good because then when other opportunities came up, I was able to really get into it. Fast forward, I'm not in the Navy anymore. And I happen to be working with orthopods that happen to be still Navy. And they wanted me to kind of help suture up an Achilles. Now, I made sure I knew their locking technique, but because of the fact that I did have that opportunity to kind of jump in and learn, I was more comfortable. And of course, it was the best outcome for the patient. So, hint, hint, if you ever get the opportunity, of course, in your scope, right? Jump in, kind of knock off those cobwebs or the fear, because it is going to just make you that much more valuable. And of course, like Quincy said, I have to piggyback as well. We're in it to help people. So why wouldn't we want to, right? Now, types of disasters that, of course, we have to talk about. So, disasters, right? We're looking at large scale events, earthquakes, hurricanes, plane crashes. These affect a lot of areas, many lives, right? This is going to lead to high patient influx, emergency surgeries. Um, they're going to be needed. So now we move from disasters to emergencies. These are smaller, localized events. I want you to think of like fire or multi car accidents. Still require quick response, but for us, there's going to be that urgent surgical need, right? These patients got to come see us for whatever reason. Then we look at that mass casualty event, also acronym MCE, right? Now, here we're looking at localized emergency, more patients than resources can handle. I have seen concepts, I have seen questions when they will definitely ask, out of these, which one is going to be considered where there's going to be more patients and not enough resources? Okay. A trail derailment, an active shooter. So for us, we're going to be preparing multiple sterile fields. We're going to be assisting in rapid back to back to back to surgeries. And we're going to help manage supplies and equipment under pressure. Each type of event requires a different level of response, but all call for us to act swiftly and effectively. And honestly, that's what we are made of. Okay, trust me, that muscle memory is going to kick in and you're going to be like, aha, this is what she's talking about. The chapter also talks about the classifications of disasters. Level one, again, local emergency. It's handled by local services, small fire or car accident. We may assist in, again, emergency surgeries. We may also manage increased patient flow, but on a local level. Now, level two, regional assistance. And so I tried to make it so you can kind of see as we go up. Okay. Local resources, help you may need from neighboring areas, because our local resources are awesome, but it's just not enough. Examples would be major industrial accidents, multi town natural disasters. Let's say a hurricane that goes from Florida, travels up to the Carolinas, ends in Virginia, right? That's 4 states potentially affected. Surgical techs, we work with teams from nearby hospitals to set up extra surgical stations. Then we get to level 3, statewide and federal assistance. We're talking about large scale disasters, earthquakes, okay? Require state and federal. We may work in mobile or makeshift hospitals, kind of like a MASH, probably telling my age if most of you don't know what MASH is. It was a show back in the day, but it's like a MASH unit where you have that tent and we'll bring people in and do surgery in a MASH unit. Um, we are still trying to make sure that we're keeping things as sterile as we can, and we're looking at our supplies during a real crisis. Now, the higher the level, the greater the coordination and teamwork is required. That includes us at every single stage. Now, let's break it down a little more. We're going to start with natural disasters: hurricanes, earthquakes, floods. But there's some challenges, right? Overcrowding and, of course, limited resources. We may assist with large numbers of those patients that are injured. So that means that we're trying to keep our items, our instruments sterile in these tough environments. With technological or accidental, in quotes, disasters, these are caused by chemical spills, explosions, power plant failures. The one that comes to my mind is Chernobyl, right? Where the radiation, it exploded. I don't know which, I forget which tower or which one it was, but that area is not safe for like 1,000 half-lives or something like that, which is a very long time that radiation is still seeping through. Okay. So you focus on trauma and contamination safety protocols because you don't want people to be exposed and now they're injured as well, right? And then we get into pandemic versus epidemic. Pandemic, widespread. It's global disease outbreak like none other than COVID-19 or even Ebola. Epidemic, localized outbreak. Maybe one county in LA has flu, just in that one area, right? You cross over to San Diego and everyone's good. Now, for us, we look at strict infection control protocols. And then this chapter still tells us about terrorist events, bombing, chemical attacks, high casualty numbers. We're talking about a need for rapid trauma surgeries and sterile environments. We look at this all hazard approach where it's preparing healthcare teams, surgical teams for any disaster type. It gained a lot of focus, unfortunately, after 9/11. Okay. We are trained to adapt to multiple scenarios. So here's a question. Do you think it's better for us to train for each type of disaster separately, or should the all hazard approach be the main focus? What do you guys think? Again, this is not a wrong or right answer. It's just, how do you feel? Do you feel as an ST we should be able to work in an area that has just been flooded, that just had a horrible tornado, that had a shooting? Yes, all types, both. It kind of goes back to what Quincy says, and Quincy, I'm going to be quoting you because I really like that one, is this is what we're in here for, right? We're here to help people. So the more that we can kind of get ourselves acclimated to as many situations, the better. So again, thank you. I'm going to be using that. Now, we also look at agencies. The chapter talks about like FEMA uses the National Incident Management System to kind of organize disaster response across all sectors. NIMS provides a standardized framework, clear management structure, defined chain of command, and it also provides roles and responsibilities for all responders. But why, again, is it important for us to know the levels, right? Well, it helps hospitals coordinate with police, with fire, and government agencies. It also makes sure that we know our role in the response plan. And it all goes back to the patient, right? So it supports efficient patient care, safe working conditions, and really an organized use of our resources during a crisis. We know what we have, we know what we can do, and we know our capabilities for the most part, because in these different disasters, you don't know the unknown, but you try to prepare yourself for the best way you can. Now, with local, again, local government leads disaster management using the guidelines from the federal. So they're using the guidelines from FEMA, they're using the guidelines from NIMS, okay? They work with government and non-government agencies to just prepare and respond. Hospitals are the first responders for victims like in the community. For us, we work with established disaster protocols. Again, we are going to be in the operating room. We're going to be the subject matter expert when it comes to sterile technique. And we're really good at working under pressure because that's what we do day in and day out. It's just now we've got a little bit more patience. We've got a little bit more instruments that we've got to turn over and rooms to set up. We're also managing supplies effectively. With local coordination, we know that our role can support patient care, and it also aligns with the community's broader emergency response. Again, this chapter is not that long. We're almost halfway through already. It's only 17 minutes in. So the second half, now we look at the 4 phases of disaster cycles. We got to look at the documentation, especially for our own preparedness. We have to describe the main components and strategies used by communities to really prepare their local disaster plan, define the incident command systems, and explain how it works. We have to look at our basic needs, especially during a disaster. Look at the primary components of a healthcare facility disaster plan, ethical dilemmas, because they unfortunately are going to come up. And then we're going to finish explaining the possible roles that we would really be in, like deep diving. Yeah, when are we going to be in the operating room, but what are we going to be actually doing during a disaster? So we look at the cycle. Now, for us, we start with mitigation, which is one of the questions in the intro, right? Intro video. We're talking about actions to reduce disaster impact, stronger buildings, emergency plans. I know at Balboa, like if there's an earthquake, it's on a roller, so it's not going to kind of come down, it'll kind of move, and I think that's standard. And we check our surgical protocols and supplies for readiness. That's just what we're going to be doing normally. We get into mitigation and then we move to preparedness, training, drills, planning for those emergencies. We practice procedures. We prepare for expanded surgical capacity. We have our supposed to be recover or response, but I have recovery down there twice. We have response. This is where immediate actions during a disaster. There's triage. There's emergency surgeries going on. We're maintaining sterile fields. We're supporting our surgeons. We're managing our equipment under pressure. And then the real recovery over here, keep in mind, this is supposed to be response. So mitigation, preparedness, response, then recovery, okay? We are actually rebuilding. We're returning to some type of normal operations the best we can, right? We as STs provide ongoing surgical care. We're supporting long-term patient recovery. Now, the disaster cycle ensures that the entire healthcare team, including us, we're ready before, during, and after disasters. Quick question. Which phase of the disaster cycle do you think we impact the most? Mitigation, preparedness, response, or recovery. And even looking at the image above, remember that one word is supposed to be a different one. But even looking at that image above, where do you think where our lane is? That's right, Mark. Yes, we're at the response, not recovery. We're actually at the response. We're prepping too. So we're kind of like over here, right? We're getting everything ready and then we're in the operating room because this is what we're doing. We're getting our stuff ready and then we're in the operating room doing those cases. And that's not saying that we're not over here, but this is where our lane really is, okay? Where we're preparing and we're responding. Now, we do talk about mitigation versus response. Mitigation, risk reduction before disaster. The goal is to minimize risk before they happen. Safer buildings again, safety protocols, stocking supplies. Again, we are looking at our supplies. We're checking them. We're making sure that things work. We're looking at our backup systems for our surgical equipment. We're looking at strong infection control practices. Now, during a disaster, we're acting immediately because why? We're trying to save lives. So there's some key features. We are providing urgent care. We're focusing on trauma and critical cases first because those are going to be the ones that are going to need the most, not necessarily resources, but they're going to be the one that's impacted the most. They may be bleeding. They may be the ones that if we don't get to them, they're not going to survive. Okay. Maximize staff supplies. And we're looking at our space. We're looking around. We're seeing how many patients can we get in? How many individuals do we have? I'm looking at, there's 19 of us. Okay. If we had two to a room to kind of go back to back, we go, all right, that's at least 9 teams with one to spare. Okay. We are preparing multiple surgical kits. We're preparing multiple fields quickly. We're assisting in rapid patient turnover. We're using supplies carefully because we're trying to treat as many patients as possible. Again, mitigation protects healthcare systems before a disaster. Response saves lives during a disaster. And we're important in both. Does that make sense? Kind of breaking those two down. You guys, okay, perfect. Now, talk about recovery. Trying to reduce illness, morbidity, and death, which is mortality, because we say those words a lot. Morbidity, mortality, morbidity, illness, mortality, death. And we're trying to get it to a manageable level. So who responds? Well, we have international aid workers. They'll come in. United Nations will come in. Skilled professionals. They're going to come and provide immediate medical relief, support local health systems. Again, I feel like this is what we do. We're going to be assisting in emergency and trauma surgeries. We're maintaining sterile fields in temporary clinics, mobile operating rooms. This is kind of like a MASH because like in a tent, kind of give you guys an idea where we set these up and we'll bring in patients. We're trying to keep it as sterile as possible. We don't have it open. This is just for images so you can kind of see. Hold on, that went by too fast. We are adapting to the limited resources. Mark mentioned it was like the mass shortage when COVID happened. We had to, yes, yes, that's exactly right. We had to mitigate what we use. That is 100% right. Great example. Thank you. The TV shows bring back memories. They do. One of the things that I did appreciate with Grey's Anatomy, which is a little bit because a lot of times I'm like, that's not what we do, was the way that they did project how the healthcare system was affected during COVID and how the shortages affected the entire nation and what we had to do to kind of make it work to hopefully save as many patients as we could. Now, keep in mind that recovery is a long-term process. It can take years. We may also help with ongoing care and training to support community resilience. Typically, when we talk about the minimum entry for health responders, it requires a Bachelor of Nursing with certification in like tropical medicine or public health in disaster for those mobile providers. But as STs, we can still do humanitarian um, work as well with teams. At the Children's Hospital, a couple of techs and nurses usually will go to different countries, and we're all invited to go and kind of like just do they do a lot of oral maxillofacial cases, a lot of um, palate cases for those countries where they don't necessarily get the best care. And that is another thing where just as a tech, you can kind of join and go with the teams. They usually do it every year. But even at the Children's Hospital, they also bring them to us, and it's kind of like free. 3 days they'll come and we'll be able to do it here too. That's just for those who aren't able to kind of travel. So we do a lot as techs that doesn't really get talked about. Now, another big thing is you always hear, I'm always like, you got to take care of yourself, right? When it comes to your midterms, when it comes to your finals. And it's the same when it comes to planning. Think about it. Let's say a disaster, we're not going to wish it, but something happens and they're like, all 19 of you have to stay on board until whenever. Well, in our mind, we're going to be thinking about our family, our parents, our children, our husbands, wives, whoever we have, right? So I like the fact that the chapter does talk about home disaster planning. So the CDC has a preparedness guide where there's just some steps for emergencies, making a plan, gathering supplies, staying informed about certain threats. FEMA preparedness guide will ask you, are you ready? Right? Well, it'll help create a personalized emergency plan that works for you and your family where you can build your emergency supply kit. They do have them on Amazon and Home Depot, but you can build it yourself. You learn about potential hazards. They do have a printable, like, quick reference. But why does it matter? Well, being personally prepared at home, it's less stress during the actual crisis because you can't get to your loved ones. It allows you to focus on your professional duties in a disaster response, which goes in with preparedness. Preparedness is the first and foundational step in planning for disaster. The phase involves getting ready for any disaster scenario by developing strategies and systems that will enable a community to respond effectively. Now, here's how it works. You have local team building, where healthcare, emergency responders, and leaders, they form a coordinated team. We collaborate with surgeons, nurses, and EMS. We do a risk analysis. We identify local hazards, maybe natural, could be technological, could even be human made, unfortunately. We again are going to prepare for trauma. We're looking at our equipment, we're looking at our surgical readiness. Then the staff is evaluated, facilities and supplies are all looked at. We are still ensuring sterilized instruments are ready, backup systems are good to go, and our ORs are prepped and ready. We get to the response plan. Action plan for communication, there's patient care, there's evacuation, everything's written down. Everyone knows their role. We again are making sure that everything runs as smooth as it can, considering we are responding rapidly. The local incident command system, or ICS, has the standardized framework for roles and communication. It clarifies who leads our surgical teams, how resources are distributed. With the 19 of us, we're split in half. We'll have 9 with one surgical team, 9 with another, and then we have that one person that can kind of float back and forth if need be. We look at coordination, hospitals, EMS, law enforcement, and community groups. Everyone's coming and working together. For us, it aligns with other teams for, again, effective patient care. When we get to the ICS, or the logistics, talk about a smooth delivery of supplies and equipment. Now, does it always happen? like we would like. No, but we try to make it as smooth as possible. We're still maintaining our sterile fields. We're tracking our inventory. We are requesting resources if we need it. Each element that you see supports the teamwork, readiness, and effective patient care during a disaster. But we're not done, right? We're still working with other individuals, trying to make sure that we, not only with our work preparedness, our family preparedness is ready. Having a emergency plan for loved ones so that we can actually focus on what we have to do, which means keeping clean water or filtration available, communicating if something fails, having a plan for backups. Keep in mind, during a disaster, phones may not work. So what are we doing? Do we have radios? Do we have a meeting point? Decide on safe location if we are separated. And this makes me think of like The Walking Dead, right? When everything happened and like, okay, what are we gonna do if, granted, we're not talking about zombies, but what if systems do fail, right? Like, what do we do? The chapter also talks about a 72-hour kit: food, water, clothing, hygiene, and medical items for at least 3 days. Also having a go bag, a quick access bag with essentials, plus PPE, medical tools, scissors, if assisting in a disaster. Being prepared at work and at home just ensures that we, as CSTs, can really perform effectively no matter the emergency. Now, which is more important for us during a disaster? Professional readiness at the hospital or personal family preparedness at home? For me, it's both. That's just my humble opinion. Um, but people may argue, either side, and they're not going to be wrong because that's how they personally feel. But for me, making sure that my family is safe while I'm maybe stuck at a hospital is just as important, because I know that if I'm scrubbed in to an emergency case during a disaster, my mind's going to still be like, oh my gosh, do they have this? Do they have that? We actually do have um, a kit, um, because you just never know. You just never know. So we talked about this ICS, the localized um, incident command system. All right. It's a standardized disaster management framework, right? Now, it meets the needs of the incident, meaning that it's going to make sure that all aspects of the disaster are covered. We're going to keep the ORs ready. We're assisting in surgeries. We're making sure that everything is done efficiently. Rapid agency coordination with fire, law, hospitals, responders. We're coming together. We're working it so that our patients are receiving the best possible care. But they're also giving supplies. They're making sure that they're giving everyone at the front line, middle line, and even the back everything they need. And they're also preventing duplication of efforts, which is really good, because it doesn't help if we've got the two teams separated, but for some reason we're like walking over each other. Like, if team one, we have cases 1 through 10, and then team two, okay, any case after that, 11 through 20, you guys got. That way, we're not kind of like stepping on top of each other, and that does waste a lot of resources. It creates order, efficiency during disasters. It's guiding us into our specific roles within the healthcare response. There are human needs that the chapter talks about, and this is extremely important. In the aftermath of a disaster, addressing human needs is so important because we're trying to support the affected population and making sure that there is some type of recovery. The chapter talks about the essential needs during a disaster: shelter, safe housing for displaced people. We may assist with medical care and supplies in different shelters. And I kind of have it so you can see it in like a little row. Food and water, nutrients, safe food, Healthcare teams are monitoring food safely. Sanitation is huge. Waste hygiene management prevents disease, so we may help maintain sterile conditions. Water, clean drinking water is so important. So hospitals may have to rely on purification systems if, for some reason, the water system as a whole is down. We forget about medical, well, we actually think about medical assistance, not forget. We think about medical assistance because we look at trauma care, surgeries for us, emergency treatment. We're going to be important in the operating room. We already know that. But sometimes they may have to evacuate whole hospitals, evacuate that whole tent that you just put up because now you're in danger of another disaster. So moving people from the danger zone. We may assist with triage and care during transport. My mouse is very tricky today. I'm so sorry, guys. Um, Protection is another one that we don't tend to think about. We're trying to keep people from harm or neglect. And we look at our vulnerable population, children, elderly, disabled, or the chronically ill, they may need extra care. Once things have settled down, families may have been separated. So the chapter does talk about reunification, helping families reconnect. We can support while providing medical care. Now, we also look at the facility itself. Communication is important. Effective communication is going to be what helps coordinate disaster response efforts. Healthcare facilities, they have to stay in contact with emergency services, local authorities, and other hospitals or clinics. We have to be available to communicate with our team and other medical staff about, let's say, the status of patients. We may be the runners. We may have to help other rooms with surgical needs, available resources, just to make sure that everyone is aligned and that resources are used effectively. Now, in some disaster situations, they may have to evacuate, and that's what you kind of see in the image. This could be due to structural damage from an earthquake, and maybe it was a huge tremor that there might have been a space that was able to be damaged, or contamination, or threats from the disaster itself. We could be in the line of a tornado, like coming straight to that facility. Got to get those patients out. So we may assist in patient transfer, providing medical care during the evacuation, looking at equipment, maybe their surgical instruments, safely transporting everything to a new facility. But even that, so let's say none of that is what's happening. Maybe let's say these patients are coming in and there's just too many. That's what we call a surge capacity. This refers to when the healthcare facility's ability to manage a sudden influx of patient, it's just too overwhelming. Now, we have what's considered that mass casualty incident at the facility. There's too many patients, not enough staff. We've got to start rerouting these patients. We have to be prepared for that increased caseload, working quickly, efficiently. This is going to be a high stress environment. This may involve, again, setting up additional operating rooms, sterilizing additional instruments on a tight timeline, and adapting to a rapidly changing condition. Now, there are ethical and practical issues when we look at disasters. We look at our at-risk groups, our elderly, our poor, our chronically ill, disabled. Unfortunately, they could be often overlooked. We look at immediate assistance versus long-term needs. Urban, accessible areas get help first. Remote areas, they may unfortunately have to wait longer just because of how far or where they're located, and they may not have access to the same facilities at a closer time. Perceived needs versus actual needs is another one. People may request care, but shelter, food, or sanitation could be at a higher priority. So then we have to think, how would teams decide what's most urgent? And we still have to talk about money. Government compensation is always a big one. Should the government cover losses, property, health, livelihood? But even with that, these individuals have to look at the criteria to guide disaster compensation. We also look at resource allocation across multiple areas. There could be limited supplies. Personnel must be prioritized by regions. They still have to look at criteria to guide the distribution of those resources. And I always refer back to the Lord of the, is it the Lord of the Rings? No. Um, there's a book that I always read because it talks about human behavior and disasters. People may show fear, they may show teamwork, they may panic, and they may hoard during an actual disaster. So then they're looking at how can healthcare workers help keep order and calm when we ourselves may be nervous, right? Should the sickest patients always be treated first, or should priority go to those most likely to survive? These are different questions. Now, in the military, I always have to shift gears as to where I'm at because in the military, we do not, and this isn't to be heartless, we treat the individuals most likely to survive and the ones with the least wounds first. In the civilian sector, it's flipped. But think about it. When we're in the field and we're treating our patients, we're trying to get people back out to the field, right? So as the civilians, we're trying to save lives. If you stabilize, yes. If not, no. So it's going to be dependent on where you're at. And for me, I always have to flip. This is civilian sector. This is not the military section. We are going to treat our patients, the sickest that are bleeding out, that have a lower rate of survival. We're trying to get them to survive. And the ones that have smaller will be triaged a different color. In military, it's flipped. Okay. We also look at balancing urban versus rural communities when resources are scarce. Another question. So these individuals that come together, they have a lot on their plate. We also look at staff assignments. There's what's called a job action sheet that the chapter talks about, where it talks about the staff duties, chain of command, and communication. Now, for us, tasks may include prepping the OR, sterilizing instruments, assisting in surgery, supporting patient care. What we do normally, right? Now, our main role usually is our sterile field, right? We are with our surgeon, we are preparing our instruments. Our extended role, triage, patient transport, supply management, or even administrative support if needed. We look at activation of emergency plans, okay? Early step in disaster response. Staff are called, taxed, mobilized based on the needs. We are often used to help set up additional surgical spaces for an influx of patients. A lot of times there's going to be an increase in surgical demand. Mass casualties means more emergency surgeries. That means, again, you guys are hearing me repeat, we're preparing our operating rooms. We're doing our surgical assistant. We're passing our instruments. We're maintaining sterility. And we are supporting multiple procedures under a lot of pressure. Now, when we talk about working outside our normal scope, this kind of goes back to when I was talking about suturing. It's not our normal scope of practice by any means, but depending on the situation, things can change. We may help with triage and wound care, not in our normal scope of practice. Patient transport, looking at non-sterile procedures and logistics, supply chain management. Now, we also have to have a little bit of flexibility. Disaster plans outline staff call-in and rotation. We may have to work long shifts. extended hours, or adapt to other hospital roles. So again, goes back to the suturing. Cross training does provide flexibility in a response, and you feel a lot more comfortable when you go into these other spaces. Regardless of all that, we are so important in the operating room during disasters, but we also have to be ready to step into expanded roles to support patient care and hospital response. So let's get to our case study. An earthquake has occurred. The epicenter is approximately 50 miles from our workplace. You hear on the radio that all primary health care and allied health care employees should be on standby for immediate duty. You receive a call, we pick it up, to come into the facility and remain on duty there for an indefinite period of time. We're going to be staying at the hospital until the first phase of the disaster has passed. So, how will we prepare ourselves mentally for this assignment? What are some of the first things you're going to be trying to think of? Again, there's no wrong answers, y'all. I like that. Breathe. Yes, please breathe. Because that is, after you've kind of like gone through the shock and be like, what? I'm going to be there how long? Breathe. Try to stay calm. Try not to feel overwhelmed. Short meditation. Make sure someone is available to watch my kids. Me too. I'm with you. Pray. Yes. Yes. Stay calm mind. These are important. Okay. The reason I say that is because there are going to be cases where we may not necessarily be in an earthquake, but there are going to be certain procedures where you're going to be like, oh my goodness, okay. There are certain cases that during certain steps, we're all like holding our breath until we get past those steps. Once you get in the operating room, you'll know exactly what I mean. And hopefully that will be going through your mind. All right. Now, I'm going to mentally prepare, just like you guys are saying, focusing on the importance of my role, right? We're going to be helping the community during this disaster. I'm going to constantly remind myself my work is important. I'm going to try to set aside personal concerns because we've got our plan in place. My family knows what we need to be doing. The dog is going to be taken care of. The kids are not going to be left stranded. I would try to set everything in motion so that when I know they're good, I'm good. Taking it one day at a time. So yes, we're all on the same page. Again, not a long chapter. What questions do you have for me before we get into our quick Quizlet? No questions? Okay. All right. So for this Quizlet, I'm going to go ahead and give you guys the link. For those of you that are watching, it will be in the live archive section. This is strictly from this week. There are 50 concepts. Do a quick little live. I try to have it already set up. Make sure it's fast mode. Okay, 12 questions. Now, if you are able to join, it was playing the music. I just turned it down. It's really loud. All right. Are you guys ready? So there's 12 of us that are in. The other seven, you guys can kind of see what the question's going to be. Let's start. Again, this is a fast round, okay? Looking for those of you who are watching, you can type in what you think it is. You guys are flying. Yes. All right. Good job, everyone. This was quick and fast. Quick and fast. Good job. All right. Let me get this other screen out of the way. Well, for those of you that are watching the archive, here are three questions. How can we balance our usual operating room duties with the unexpected demands of a disaster response, and what skills might be needed to adapt to that shift? And the second one, in a mass casualty event, how should resources be prioritized? And who should decide which patients receive immediate care versus delayed treatment? Now, before I saw from Jessica that what do we do if the equipment is ruined? That's a great question. We're going to have backups, especially um, right after the disaster. A lot of times we may have to overhaul. So our logistics individuals are going to be kind of like taking notes of everything because we're going to be moving pretty fast. No one's going to get blamed, right? Because it's part of what we're doing. But if it's during a procedure and something gets run, it's going to be removed from the field. Another one's going to be replaced. If it's after, we're going to mark it and have it sent off again for it to be replaced because this was something that we needed. And it doesn't matter if it's an instrument set, if it's a tower that we need for cameras, no matter what it is. Does that kind of help kind of like put it into perspective? Like we're not gonna get blamed because we know why, you know, we're moving. Okay. Now, if someone's in the back, like taking a hammer and like beating it, of course, that's a whole different story. But if it's just like normal wear and tear just because of what's happening, we're going to mark it, replace it, and kind of like get back to the recovery. So that's going to be in the middle of the response, right? Because can't do anything about it while we're treating our patients, but we're going to make sure it's good afterwards. All right. Now, in this live session, chapter 36, we looked at a different concept. We talked about everything from professional to personal. We know why it's important for us, but we also know our role. We did a quick Quizlet. Again, for those of you who are watching, you're going to have the link in the live archive. Our quote of the week: your present circumstances do not determine where you can go. They merely determine where you start. I'm going to get you guys out of here, but I do look forward to seeing everyone who can come for tomorrow's live session. Good night, everybody.